the idea of placemaking is about creating opportunities for people to appreciate where they are. It's like I found like along the way, people think Copake, oh, it had its better days. But there's an essence that still is here, and it still rings really true to me.
This is Hudson Valley Storycatcher. I'm Jen Lee. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Catherine Mikic, a trained architect who gravitated toward historic preservation. And these days, Catherine identifies most as a placemaker and a cultural landscape advocate. If you're wondering what those things mean, you're in the right place. I knew as soon as I came across Catherine's work that I wanted to talk to her about all kinds of things. What it truly means to connect with the land, uncovering hidden histories, and advocating for the spaces we live in and love. Our conversation is a really inspiring look at how history, imagination, and collaboration can completely revive a community. Let's jump in. What else should we know about you, Catherine?
Well, I'm a trained architect from New York, stayed in New York for decades. But as a young artist there, I was always involved in creating civic spaces, like ad hoc guerrilla civic spaces in New York City, including in Tompkins Square Park and in various sites around the city. And worked in architecture, but always kept this parallel interest in civic spaces and advocacy work, particularly about rebuilding community spaces. That was always my focus. And I really, really loved working with old buildings and the old materials and structures. And the process is about negating yourself and letting the building reveal itself. So it's an internal practice to do that kind of work. I really loved it. Came up here, up to this area in 2018. I settled in Hudson, renovated my 1890 townhouse, and during COVID, wanted another project and ended up taking on and purchasing a historic family farm and homestead on Center Hill Road, just outside of Copake Town Center. It was a visceral attraction to the site. It was very, very powerful. The site is extraordinarily beautiful, situated on a knoll overlooking rich farmland and the valleys and the mountains, like the gentle mountains and hills beyond. It really spoke to me. And I decided to take that on as my renovation project during COVID. And to my great surprise, got connected up with a lot of people who were familiar with history in this part and started doing research with them and discovered that this was, in fact, one of the oldest surviving farmhouses and family homesteads still surviving in this part of Columbia County. As I immersed myself in the research for that site, someone suggested to me that this property was worthy of National Register designation. People kind of drive by these farms and we don't know much in our society about rural landscapes, the rural farms, old farms. But I saw this property and I had so many questions. Why is this noble property in such disrepair? What happened? What is that history? And you see so many along the road like that too. So as I was pursuing the National Register designation for that property, and I wrote the entire nomination, went really, really deep in that. And rather than focusing on the architectural history per se and the building style and the materials per se, I took an unusual approach and approached it with an ethnographic eye, meaning that I was very interested in the ecological setting. I was interested in the social spaces, the political context of the time, the economic context of the time, and how did this particular family navigate those? How did they express themselves through this property? So that's kind of the viewpoint, and it opened up an entire world to me. And one that I was just so surprised to find as I started sharing my work both with historians at the State Historic Preservation Office and with historians in town and people in town who were familiar with its history. It started to crack open another level of understanding what this town is about and what rural culture is about and what this rural landscape still holds for all of us. As I was working on the land and removing invasives and getting just really hands-on and just maintaining that property, I started to have real visceral experiences on that land. And there was something deep, very, very deep on that land. And I could feel it, and you could just feel the spirits of the past. And like, there was just so much energy and life there. And shortly thereafter, I was invited to be part of the town's historic preservation committee. And I rose to the position of chair, like within the first year. And I started leading efforts to step back and take a new look at what Copake's history was all about. And during that time, I actually uncovered a archaeological report that was done, back in the 2000s, uncovering archaeological digs that had been occurring here in this area, that date back to 7,000 BC, documenting that this was one of the cultural centers for the Indigenous Mohican people. So all of a sudden, it added this whole other dimension and this whole other layer. And it confirmed that there's something very, very deep that the land is still holding. And I just felt that I was able to access that. I started sharing that story with some people early on. And people that have been here a long time are like, yeah, you get it too. I get that. Mm-hmm. People that allow themselves to experience the land knows that it holds tremendous meaning for us, both personal, spiritual, ecological. It's very, very deep.
It's really interesting when you're talking about your work in New York City. Made me realize often when I'm thinking of architecture and design, I'm thinking of people bringing themselves and their ideas and being like, I will erect a place, I will fill it with my creative vision or my aesthetic. And when you're talking about working in historic sites where you're saying, no, I'm trying to let the building emerge and not focused on myself and my personal vision, but I'm listening to the building. And it sounds also similar to now you're on this site and you're having this feeling of not just listening to the structure on it, but feeling like you're hearing from the land itself.
Yes.
And I think that it's surprising to think, oh, someone's from architecture and design in New York City and ends up in this rural place doing historic preservation and work with the land.
The one thing that I realized is that the people that settle in this land are deeply connected to this land. Mm. They are only here for this land. It was a little bit groundbreaking to come forward with what turned out to be an 18-acre historic district nomination, because the property did grow from farmhouse to ice house to barns to secondary house to contributing landscapes, and it did become a historic district nomination. It exists today as a historic district. And it's just important for people to understand the really deep meaning that it brings culturally and historically, but also the visceral personal experiences that we can all have on this land and the need that we must all undertake to steward these properties and steward these sites. They just have a lot of meaning.
That makes sense, because I'm thinking of how for many people who don't live in this exact vicinity, their experience might just be driving through, driving near or around.
Well, there are a few opportunities I realized for people to get out of their car and step onto that farmland. I took on the Sweet Sherman Homestead, secured the National Register nomination. I wanted the land to be kept as farmland. There was a local family. They own a flower farm in the area. They had approached a local real estate broker who was a friend of mine and said, we're interested in that property and we want to make it a flower farm and preserve it as farmland. So I ended up selling that, and that was always my vision. So they are in the process now of rehabilitating the farmhouse, the outbuildings. They're going to make flower processing there, and they're going to create a large flower farm in this very prominent stretch of Center Hill Road. So for me to have this new steward on the property that really gets it and they really appreciate that was really the perfect end result for that project. So I
That's
just felt
so gratifying.
I was so gratified by that. That was really amazing.
At the beginning, we shared about this idea of you identifying as a placemaker.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you're sharing about your work, I'm hearing that having a few layers. It's like there's this almost archaeological, historical perspective that you're bringing. Then there's this idea of restoration and restoring things that have maybe fallen into decline. But then also you're bringing this idea of like then letting those things inform what's being envisioned.
Yes.
And dreamed of for what's next. So I want to hear more about, because I feel like you're doing that same approach and you've brought it to additional projects.
The town has just been wonderful. And in 2024, I got involved in the bicentennial celebrations. I published a book on the history of Copake with some vintage postcards. And again, tying this whole concept of land and earth being the originator of what this place is as a place, and the histories and the overlay of Indigenous and the settler people, and introduced that whole thread, that whole concept of landscape and history being connected to the human story here. So, as chair of the Historic Preservation Committee here in town, it's, put me in great position to have relationships with people here. And I have to say, it's a fantastic town, extremely collaborative. An opportunity arose that I saw a couple of years ago. There's a roadway infrastructure project that came into town, and it was going right through the middle of the hamlet of Copake, which is pretty much considered the town center for Copake, which is a rural farming area. And what was once a social square really just became nothing more than a traffic circle. And when this roadway reconstruction project came in and they wanted to change some of the intersections, and there were opportunities to maybe bring back what that town center was historically, I started having dialogues with some of the town officials. And the town officials, aren't trained to think creatively about what town centers could look like or what a roadway rehabilitation project could look like. But they were extremely receptive to the idea of what if we were to get back closer to what that town center was in 1824.
Like more of a heart of the community instead of just a chaotic place people are trying to drive through.
Exactly, with no identity. There's no identity. What if we tried to reestablish and redefine that? So this opportunity for a new park arose in the town center. And there is a historic clock in the center of town, which will now become the focal point of this new park. And it's also on the National Register of Historic Places. And we are really on the way now to proactively and creatively learning from the past, drawing from many historic references and photos and narrative about what the town center was, and coming forward with a vision that works in the 21st century to accommodate vehicular traffic, but also to very firmly reestablish a town center for this town. And I'm very hopeful about the impact that will have on this town to create opportunities for people to gather and to meet one another informally, to sit around this beautiful clock and to honor the town's history and the memorials that are associated with that clock. So
it's not every day that you get an opportunity to come in and be part of reimagining what the heart of a community could look like.
Absolutely. And when it was first proposed to the team who was heading up this roadway reconstruction project, they were like, we're just doing roads. There's going to be a little grass over there. Like, what are you talking about? And I thought, but look at these historic images. Wouldn't it be interesting if we could begin to get back to that? And it's really just a failure of imagination, or maybe just a failure of not having the information. But when you bring that kind of the power of those images and those ideas to a group, people readily understand that. They get it. Yeah.
And one thing I'm curious to hear you just say a little bit more about is this idea of like civic spaces and how you see a center of a hamlet like this, how you see that operating civically, how you see it connecting with democracy and being able to practice that.
Absolutely. Well, think about it now, with the No Kings rallies. Where do people gather? You gather in a town's green space. The civic greens, the town park, there is a center. As a democracy, I've realized in recent months how important those civic squares are. Where will people rally here in Copake if they want to speak out against their town government or their state government or their federal government? That square was obliterated. Let's bring it back. That's crucial for democracy, for us to have our squares back and for people to have that right to gather. So that's what I'm bringing back, too, for democracy. I'd like to talk about the Shepherd's Run project.
I'd like to hear about the Shepherd's Run project.
So the Shepherd's Run is a large-scale, major renewable energy project that has been proposed in the town of Copake since 2017. It is proposed by an out-of-town Chicago-based developer, Hecate Energy, and the developer has proposed to install 220 acres of large-scale solar panels plopped right down in the middle of a historic farming hamlet, without regard to people's houses, without regard to local small businesses. It's sitting on a New York State Department of Environmental Conservation protected watershed that provides drinking water to the city of Hudson. But New York State policy allows them to disregard all of that. I started an organization, Arcadian Alliance, and it was a nonprofit advocacy group that I started with former Copake Town Supervisor Jean Metler, with the president of the Rojan Historical Society, Leslie Doyle, and myself as chair of the town's Historic Preservation Committee. And we began to advocate for protecting the site of the Shepherd's Run solar site, by saying, yeah, you're disrupting waterways, you're disrupting protected waterlands, businesses, you're behind all these existing homes. And the site, too, is on the western gateway into Copake. And Copake is a really unique heritage site. We have 8 National Register listed properties now. In Craryville alone, where this project is proposed, there are 5 additional National Register eligible properties. Copake is a quintessential representation of 19th century rural farm experience. We have been growing our heritage tourism industry here. Farming and agritourism industry is growing here. Columbia County is one of the fastest growing tourism sectors or locations in all of New York State. So it's a huge part of the local economy. And this developer and the state as an enabler, allows them to come in, wipe out the integrity of this heritage tourism and recreation tourism center, because they think their solar panels and the energy that they're generating is more important than those old houses down the road. Those don't matter. We just need to keep feeding more and more energy to New York City and to AI data centers. Like, that's what we need to do. That is not balanced, and that's not democratic. They're just acting out a complete societal disregard, or a large societal disregard, for what rural life is and what rural life and rural history and heritage contributes to larger society.
Right. You've shared a lot about all these ways that you've been involved in the community and all of these projects that you've brought your passion to and had amazing results with. I'm also just curious on a personal note, like, how has being engaged in this work and being in this place here, how has that changed you? What impact has it made on you?
It's completely changed my life. I mean, I was New York City, 40 years, went to school there, stayed there, had my career there, worked in urban architecture, and it was really enjoyable. Coming here, you have to open up your heart to the work. You have to really be part of nature and stand there and figure out what way are the breezes going, which way would I want to face, where is the sun moving on this site. That's one thing. But then in the process itself, it's a lot of personal and community engagement. I've been working with inside of community, with town government, but also with other citizen groups to raise awareness about this and to share my experiences and to hear their experiences, and trying to create opportunities for people to maybe start to open their hearts and their bodies to an experience in nature like this, because this is really an extraordinarily beautiful and rich place. So the new town center in the park, that will be a civic gathering space at one level. It'll be a civic focal point at another level. It's also a place for people to pause and just look at the vistas, the mountains in the back, the hills to the west, and to just be in the land and to be in nature and to just pause and to try to take that in. The idea of placemaking is about creating opportunities for people to appreciate where they are. It's like I found, like, along the way, people think Copake, oh, it had its better days. But there's an essence that still is here, and it still rings really true to me.
And I'm sure that's true of so many places.
I think it is true. I mean, this is like a laboratory for something I'm working on. I'm working it out. I think with imagination, with will, and with sensitivity, so many of these rural towns can be revived. I think that people from the city will come up, and rather than just appreciating them as quaint landscapes, can really understand the real power that lies here, the power to understand further. How did the indigenous people live here? I had no idea that there were indigenous people here 7,000 BC. Who knows that? That's crazy. That's powerful. Why were they were here? Because the land, the water, and it binds humanity. Like, it's why we're all here. We want these hills, the land, it binds us all. And so there's something really powerful in that continuity, but it's also a physical power in the land. I do believe, this is through my personal experience, not research-based, but the land does hold that power. The land is holding that memory. So that's kind of what I operate out of.
Yeah, I'm kind of hearing a few layers in what you're saying. It's like I'm seeing you as somebody who moved to this region. So it's like you've got a physical relocation, but by doing this work, I'm just seeing the way you've connected to the community, both relationally, by building all these relationships and partnerships, and then mentally, as you've done this research and you've done both like deep dives historically, but also this like mentally engaging advocacy work. You're having this visceral experience physically in the spaces that you're working toward. And all of it together just seems like it's like your heart is like sending its roots down and really grounding in. Like your whole self is so like, rooted into the community, which is really different than someone who's just like moved into a house and like lived there a few years.
Yeah.
It's like your connectiveness is like on all these different levels.
Oh, that resonates with me. I think that sounds right. And yeah, I mean, I've just allowed myself to open up.
And it feels like such an inspiration that could be possible for other people in their own places to open up, to look around.
Yeah, I would hope so. I think it's obviously been transformational for me, but it's really moving the needle in this town and, reviving interest in history, in the landscape. I'm just operating from my experience and a very deep, visceral conviction and a recognition of something so essential. And I'm not sure if it's primal, but there's something like, I live in my imagination. I envision this town center. I see the Sweet Sherman Homestead. I see that as a very vibrant, functioning social landscape. And so I see that in my mind, and I want other people to see that and experience that. It's all right there. Sometimes we've been untrained to see that. And I think that we can train ourselves to see that again. And I'm hoping that the town park will serve as a really good example for this town and maybe others in the area of recapturing some of these old civic spaces that kept communities together. They connected people, and they were also the squares were the foundation of our democracy. So it's all connected.
So it's taking from being informed by the history of a place, taking that, meeting it with imagination, inspiration, possibility, and then it's going to result in a place that can be inhabited, whether it's at the Sweet Sherman Homestead by a flower farm, or the new square that will be inhabited by the residents of Copake.
Yes.
It's all very exciting. And I'm grateful that you're here in the Hudson Valley doing this work.
I'm grateful that I'm here. This has been one of the biggest gifts of my life.
It's worth devoting yourself to.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing is
I am, because it's giving me something very concrete, a concrete avenue to work through to make tangible differences in people's lives, but also the storytelling of a community. It's really important. I've seen it firsthand, and I see how powerful and important that is. It's important to me. It's impacted people. It impacts more people as the work grows. So I just feel very
uncovering those stories and reviving the story of the place.
Yeah.
In addition to reviving the place itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really incredible.
I appreciate your being interested in understanding what this work is about. And like I say, this is just a laboratory, and I'm just kind of go with it and put one foot and trying to figure out where I'm led. And there just seems to be so much possibility, and I'm just really excited for these opportunities here.
I'm excited too. We might have to check in with you later and see how the laboratory experiment is going and where you go from here.
Sounds really good.
Because I have a feeling too that you're just on the beginning leg of this work that you're on.
Yeah, it feels
really
like
exciting.
My life's work.
A culmination. It really feels like a culmination.
It is a culmination. It's brought together a lot. Yes. Thank you.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Jen.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Hudson Valley Storycatcher. And a special thank you to Catherine Mikic for showing us the tangible difference that comes from opening our hearts to the spaces around us. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with a friend. You can also follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And you can support the show by leaving a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Until next time, keep your heart open and your ears ready. Every neighbor has a story. I'm Jen Lee. Thank you for catching this story with me.